Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Linda Alexander. She's a mindset coach for moms.
So, switching gears. How do you help moms deal with mom guilt? That's probably like the biggest common universal emotion that we all have. And especially, I know it's just so strong in the United States. I can't really speak to other countries, but it's like, it just happens. Like, I'll tell you an example recently. I go to my kids. I have 4 kids. They all play sports. I go to all their games. I really don't miss anything. Well, a few weekends ago, there was a basketball tournament and I had a ton of work to catch up on. So I'm like, you know what? I've been to everything of his. I literally haven't missed of anything. So I missed the one thing that turned out they won the tournament and they're all celebrating. And then all the parents are taking pictures, but it's all just the moms and the sons. So my son was the only one without a mom in the picture. And I was like, the one time I chose to catch it all season, like it wasn't, all the games were no big deal. And like the one I chose to skip is the one that I felt awful about. So I really had to talk myself off kind of a cliff there and just be like, you know what? He knows I love him. He knows I care. He, knows I've been to every other game. Like, I'm not going to allow this one instance to like really destroy me, because for a second it did destroy me for a second, but I had to get myself out of that. So how do you work with moms on that?
So the first thing that, like, if you were telling me this as my client, I would ask you, well, what would you say to your best friend if your best friend just told you the story and said like, hey, I felt so bad that I couldn't be there, and it was like this one time they won and all the other moms were there, I was literally the only one. What would you tell that friend? Because the truth is, we are often the hardest on ourselves. It's like this constant talk in our head, and that's like one thing we want to be mindful of and start training our brain to think differently. Because we are going to get all day long, we will be like, this is so bad, like you should have been there, and now like the day is ruined. And so that would be like my first question for you. And then also, often we have so high expectations. Nobody else has the same expectations of us. So another question I would have is like, well, what was the experience for your son? Like, did he have fun? Did he enjoy the win? Did he come home and say like, oh my gosh, mom, we won and it was so amazing and we celebrated and we had such a great time? And then you can have that moment with him right there. Because in our head, we want this ideal of, I have to be there so he knows that I love him. Well, if he comes home to you and he's like excited to share it with you, and he's like, you can celebrate right there and then, well, did you really miss anything? Because at the end you feel guilty because you feel like it's bad for him. But what if it isn't?
Right. But what if it isn't? Yeah. That is so powerful. That's such a powerful message, because at the end of the day, he celebrated with his buddies and his coach, and, we're like a village, we're a tribe. And so all the moms, we're all there, and he knows that he's known them all since he was 5 years old. He's now 14, almost 15. So, he feels very comfortable with them. And, at the end of the day, I'm not sure I don't think it affected him at all. I think he would have preferred me there, but I don't think it hurt him in any way.
And then it's okay. I actually had like a similar experience when my son, I think it was his 3rd birthday. We had like, for the first time, rented a place, and it was like one of those indoor trampoline jumping places. And of course, like I was going crazy. Like I was like, oh my gosh, are people showing up? And is it going to be a big celebration? And he's 3, right? So we were at that place, and at the official starting time, there were 2 other kids with their parents out of like the 16 kids that we invited. And for a moment, I was freaking out and was like, oh my gosh, nightmare coming true. Like, there's nobody here. And then I looked over at him, and I just see him playing with these big blocks that they had lying around and building like this a big house or whatever with his dad. And the other kid, like one of the other kids, was just with them. Another kid was just living his like own amazing life, going down the slide by themselves. And I realized nothing was bad in that moment. It was just me thinking that it was bad. Nobody else had the feeling like there was something missing. If anything,
Mhm.
these kids had more space to just do whatever they wanted.
Mm. Yeah.
So I just let go of it in that moment, and I could enjoy it myself. And I could just say, you know
Mhm.
what, this is perfect. We have way more than enough like food because we planned for more people, so all good. And then also over time, more people joined us. So it was really like the start that had me gotten anxious, where I was starting to go into my head. But once we step out and actually look at it from a different perspective, we often can see it's like, no, it's actually okay. It's good because
Mhm.
we are doing more than we would expect from anyone else.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, I love the idea of having moms, ask themselves these questions
Mhm.
about what does this mean to me and why? And so I recently made a video, I make little reels for social media, and I made one about disciplining your kids, or what your expectations are of your kids. And, I work mainly with teenagers and their
Mhm.
parents. And so a lot of it is about academic performance, athletic performance, the extracurriculars, getting ready for college entrance exams, all those things. And a lot of times parents are so, what's the word? Incredibly invested in a very loving way. But when it gets to the point of it's kind of like damaging the relationship a little bit, and there's kind of like putting a lot of pressure on it, I encourage people to say, well, why is this important? Just like step back for a minute and say, what is the meaning of this, that my
Mhm.
child does A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z? Because is it really about them? Or is it my love for them? Or is it something that I'm trying to make up for in my past? Like, I didn't feel good that I didn't get into good college, and so therefore I want this for my kid. Or I didn't feel good that I didn't make the soccer team, so I want my kid to. Right? It's like, whoa,
Mhm.
there has to be this boundary of like, what's about me, what's my stuff, and what's their stuff.
I actually love that you brought that up because I think that is where the key is, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because uh, often we think like we get mad because the kids are having the meltdown, or they're fighting again, like with their sibling, and I just cannot like have a quiet place, whatever it is. But often it's something that is actually from the past that is brought up within us.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's why it's so important to actually work through emotions that are piled up in our past, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where we can make the biggest difference, by really letting go of our own things.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I can actually show up as the mom that I want to be, because I don't carry my own things anymore. Instead, I can be actually supportive. Versus if I don't work through my own emotions, then I'm going to try to be the gentle parent, and I'm going to be like, I listen to you and share what's going on, and I try this for a couple minutes, and then I realize, oh my gosh, I'm getting really agitated, and I'm really getting nervous and like anxious, and it's not working, and it's supposed to work, and I'm failing here. And like all these emotions pile up
Mm-hmm.
until I burst. Like maybe it's screaming, maybe it's like throwing like a door, or like hitting the table saying enough is enough, and there goes the gentle parenting. Now I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's like it's a surprise, because nobody teaches us how to deal with our emotions. And I think
Yes.
that's why the work we do is so important, because I had high expectations of myself. I said like, I'm going to be this amazing mom, and I give my child so much room, and then I realized like all these things happened, like that the emotions piled up, and I was like tried my best, and it just failed and failed and failed and failed, until I
Mm-hmm.
realized, wait a minute, it's not this little kid, it's actually in me, and I need to work through it. But then nobody took the time to tell me how to deal with my emotions. We just expected to be able to teach it now to our kids without having it learned ourselves. That's not
Yes.
going to work.
No. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. That is like the one of the biggest things that I've noticed and kind of educated myself on, is just the importance of the parent having that emotional intelligence and the emotional regulation, so that
Mhm.
they can pass it to their child. Because, you
Yeah.
know, you work with moms with younger kids. And so there's a lot of, it's funny because our clientele is probably similar, just different ages, where there's some meltdowns and there's some emotions and there's some yelling and some screaming and some big stuff. And that's just like what happens with teenagers. But it's like their little bodies don't know what to do with the anger or the jealousy or the frustration, right? And so it's like, we can sit, if we can learn that ourselves, then we can be there to sit with them so that we can help them work through it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it, like you said, it starts with asking the right questions, asking for a different perspective, and then really doing the deeper work and letting go of emotions and finding ways to regulate ourselves. It's I just had another thought that kind of slipped myself. Maybe we'll come back later.
Well, good timing for a little pause on that. And if you come in, but we got a comment that said, give some kids some space. I completely agree with that. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it comes back to that we have our own expectation and our own, like the guilt comes in, and like the ideal of I want it perfect, that sometimes we want it so much that we don't give room for the kids to just do it their way, because it's really life.
Live comments. Oh yes, this is live.
I love that. For whoever said that, thank you so much.
Yeah, so giving the kids some space and some room to be themselves, and that's one thing that for me, has actually come up in my life recently, which is to allow your kid to be them with their own unique personalities. Since I have 4, I see the 4 different personalities, and so it's like, what's good for one isn't good for another, and so it's a constant just like balancing act in my head of, because my youngest is 11, my oldest is almost 16. And so it's like how much to be with them and how much to kind of just let them go and figure it out, and, trial and error, and let them make mistakes. And, I personally, I use a lot of my just intuitive feeling about it. I kind of like gauge that, nonverbal cues from them when I'm seeing like, oh, they're getting annoyed with me. Okay, fine, I'll leave. I go in and I check in on the boys. My boys share a bedroom, and I'm like, hey guys, how, what's going on? Like, what's up for tonight? Do you have any homework, or what's your plan for this weekend? Whatever the conversation I kind of just start out with, and I can tell sometimes they want to talk, sometimes they don't. So when they don't, I'm not going to force it. I'm just like, okay, have fun. Let me know if you need anything. I'm here. I'll be right out here in the kitchen or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what it's about. It's like this dance, right? Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less. Do we always know which one it is? No, we find out as we go. Actually, for me, when I was a kid and I watched my parents, I always thought like my parents are the ones with the answer. Like they seem to have life figured out. They planned the events ahead, and they had like everything structured, and were always like well in like 3 steps ahead, versus I was still at breakfast. They had already planned out the whole weekend. Like, like things were like, I was sitting there as a kid thinking like, how do they do that? And I just thought, oh my gosh, they just have life figured out. So when I was getting older, I was waiting for this moment where I would figure life out. And I got older, and I was 20, and I was like, surely enough, when I get 20, like this must be the moment. And I still felt like, nope, I'm still learning. I'm still falling down. I'm still not sure what I'm doing here. And I got older, and still the same thing, until finally it hit me. They didn't have it figured out. It was just over the years that it seemed that way, because they did exactly that dance of finding out, where do I let go, where do I do this, how do I approach this. And I think that's what it's about. It's a journey, so enjoy the journey and really let go of the expectation, and something beautiful may come out of it, because none of us have it figured out.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Right. And kind of being, just from an energetic sense, just being present and allowing things to, come and go, but we're not going to micromanage. We're not going to be anxious, because anxiety is about, the future, and, depression tends to be more about the past, but we're not going to go to either of those. We're just going to be where we are and allow things to happen. So moving on to our next topic, I know we talked a little bit about the timeline therapy, but what tools do you feel like have had the biggest impact on you? Can you go into that a little bit deeper?
Actually, I think for me, tool-wise, it's really NLP, really letting go, working with the unconscious, timeline therapy, really letting go of emotions. But I actually was recently asked by someone that was like pretty much like, hey, does it stop after that? Does it stop? And my answer is no. It's a constant journey. It's a constant journey of letting go, because the truth is we experience things each and every day. So even if I let go of everything until last week, well, this week still happens, and I still find myself getting upset or being confused, and they're just other things coming up. So for me, it's a little bit like an onion, and you just start peeling like the layers. And you probably experience the same thing with your clients. Like as you go deeper, there's just more to uncover, because we just go to a different level. So definitely for me, the most powerful tool is that, and then just asking the right question and getting a different perspective. I always say there's a reason why I, as a coach, have a coach, because yes, I can help other people, but I cannot help myself the same way. And why is that? Because I'm too close. I'm too emotionally involved. Like it's kind of like I'm right in front of the forest. I have these big trees in front of me, and I cannot see the forest because of that. And I will literally stand there like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So I need someone that helps me point these things out. And I think that's what it's about. Often we think we need to do it alone because we need to be strong and independent, and we need to do it by ourselves. When this is the hard way, there's an easier way by having a coach, having a Laura or a Linda or someone else to guide you, to help you uncover actually the big tree in the forest that you don't see.
Yeah. We all have blind spots, whether we want to admit it or not. we do. And so something that just popped into my head, because my question kind of generally was, what is your best advice for moms? And maybe you have an answer to that, but what I really took away from what you just said is ask the right questions and get a coach. We're not trying to make a commercial for ourselves here, but at the end of the day, what I'm thinking is, a mom could be fully like on board, like, oh my gosh, I could use that. I would love some support or some help or some guidance or someone who could help me find my blind spots. What is your way of, if a mom really wants to work with you, but a lot of times the husband has to kind of get on board or, agree to that? How would you ask that mother to, frame coaching to their husband or their co-parent?
That is a great question. I almost want to say I didn't have that scenario that much so far. I'm trying to think of my own experience. For me, it was an open conversation with my husband, because I went through the same thing where I said like, hey, I really want to work on myself. I want to let go of some things. I feel like this is the right path. It means I need to spend some money and I need to spend some time, which is not easy, because it pretty much means that he needs to do the work and he needs to be there for our son. And we talked open about it, what it means, and made sure that we both on board. Yes. But I think in my perspective, the importance there is to have an open communication and just say how it is, because at the end, the family will benefit from it. It's not something for just you. Even if you do it for you, it's not for you, because it's going to have this ripple effect. It's going to impact your family. It's going to impact your dynamic to the good. So It's actually something that you do for the whole family.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer if you had flipped me it around and asked me that question, which is, I have a new client who has some mother-daughter, teenage daughter conflict, lots of conflict. And, it's funny how the conflict just kind of infiltrates the whole family because there's another sibling, there's the dad. And so it's like, if I'm working with the mom and the mom is seeking me out to get some coaching, that's really going to benefit the entire family, and not just the one daughter with the conflict, but the younger daughter who someday may, come into that position as well and is having conflict. We help with communication skills. We help with our emotional regulation. So really it is a benefit for the whole family. And I hope that's something that maybe moms can realize today that they hadn't thought of before. So we are getting out of time. So I want to make sure we have covered everything. Okay, so why don't we do that? What would be, if you do have just a few more tips for moms and say this is the only thing they ever hear from you, what would those be?
I think for me, it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning. Put yourself first, because you're worth it and you deserve it. I think that is one of the biggest things. And then also, you're not the anger, you're not the hurt, you're not the emotion, because sometimes we label ourselves as being a specific person, like, oh, I always get so angry, or I'm always getting so impatient. No, that's just how you show up. And if that's something you want to work through and change, you absolutely can, because it's just something that just a layer, if that makes sense. It's just a layer, and it's not who you are. Being mom is cool, absolutely.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride, right?
Yes, all these comments are from today. Yeah, and so kind of my answer, because I always like to ask myself the same question I'm asking my guests, is, if there was just if I only had 2 minutes with somebody and this is like all I was ever going to get with them, it would be kind of what we talked about before, which is changing the meaning. So a lot of and it kind of goes hand in hand with putting yourself first. So, a lot of what we do as moms is not glamorous. It's not, fun. There's a lot of things we just have to do as part of the job, whether that be, making appointments or driving or cleaning or cooking, or right. All those things. That's not the fun stuff. The fun stuff is interacting with your child, right? Or having special memories created or whatever. And so if we can get over somehow these things that we don't love, and I'm not saying you have to love doing the dishes, but if you can reframe it in your mind. I had another guest on, Marcus. I think Marcus Weiss.
Yes.
We had a whole topic about what that means, because if I just did the dishes, that means, I just created this awesome meal and I just fed my kids something really healthy that they loved and they enjoyed. And we got to sit down as a family and have connection time. And the dishes are just a small byproduct of that. But I'm not going to hyper focus on oh, great, now we have to do the dishes. It's just me yay, I got to do the dishes because we had just had this great meal, and what that means. And maybe even if you can't shift the meaning, but you can shift the focus. So the focus became on the quality time with the family and less on what, it took to either prior or after to deal with that. What is your thought about that?
I absolutely agree with you. And I also understand that this may be hard for some people to understand. Now I'm supposed to excited for doing the dishes. Something that helped me actually fairly recently with that is, so for me, sometimes it was hard to motivate myself at the end of the day, it was one of those long days, going to work, taking care of the little guy, pretty much getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and the day ends at 9. And that's just when all the extra stuff is supposed to start. And I had a hard time making myself, for example, do the dishes. And what I heard there was well, tomorrow when I wake up, I do not deserve tired Linda. I don't deserve to deal with what tired Linda didn't do. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to reframe that as well. And it's just a different way of looking at it, to say, you know what, I take care of this right now, so that relaxed me or me in an hour doesn't have to deal with it, because I'm taking care of it right there and then. And I think it shows just beautifully what this whole conversation was about. There's always so many different perspectives. And while it's for someone maybe I'm getting excited to do the dishes because it means I have made a beautiful dinner and had a good time with my family. For someone else, it means just hey, you know what? I do this now for me, so I don't have to deal with it later, because I want to make sure that I take care of myself. And that's just another way of taking care of myself. So there's always so many different perspectives. And at the end, it's about understanding what works for you. Because what motivates you and guides you is completely different from what motivates me and guides me. So we just need to find the same, like the right thing for each one, and it will be much more easier and much more at flow.
Yes. Okay, we're almost out of time, but I can't let that one point go, which is, I recently heard something about procrastination, and that when you procrastinate, the idea is that you're being unkind to your future self. And so if you can think of yourself as a friend, just like you did earlier with that self-compassion conversation we had, be kind to your future self. Don't give yourself a big pile of dirty dishes in 5 a.m. in the morning. For me, I like to get my kitchen clean at night. So that way, when I have morning, it's all clean and ready to go. It might be different for other people, but the idea is don't give yourself a big job in the future. It's like handing your future self a big boulder. Your future self doesn't want the big boulder. Just deal with it now. And that might help you get kind of motivated to do the next thing, take that action that needs to be taken. And so you can feel better. And, at the end of the day, celebrate. We're all doing awesome as moms. We're all doing the best we can. And we're awesome and we're amazing and we're fabulous. So with that, Linda, how can people find you after today?
So I have 2 spaces because I don't do all the social medias. So one is on Facebook, either under my name, Linda Alexander, or my Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group, Thriving Mom Village, where moms can together, they want to grow with each other. I share weekly tips, tricks, and tools, what to do to shift the mindset and just have like a supporting environment, because we cannot do it alone. It literally takes a village. And the other place is my website, which is www.thethrivingmomlife.com. Those are the 2 places.
Okay, say that website one more time just so people could hear it.
www.thethrivingmomlife.com.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, Linda, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. There were so many great tidbits throughout. Was there one highlight that you had?
I think I actually really liked the whole conversation. I love how it all tied into the reframing. For me, a big thing when it comes to procrastination is it's just a prettier version of perfection. And perfection is just something we will never achieve. So just let go of it. I really enjoyed it. I would love to go deeper. And thank you so much for having me.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.